Thank you for having us here. We're very blessed to be able to come and talk to you about the Appropriations Committee. You know, I came into Congress in 2002, and I got on the Appropriations Committee in 2004, which is sort of a record. I was pretty proud of that, I thought. And at the time, I was told this is the most important and most respected committee in the entire country. And you should be very proud to be on the Appropriations Committee. The Appropriations Committee gets things done. It's kind of like when I went to the University of Texas Law School, and at the time I went in there, University of Texas had like 4 10-0 or 9-1 seasons in football. They were a superpower and won one national championship. And I started at their school, and they had a 6-4 season, and then they had another 6-4 season. They were talking about firing Darrell Royal, a legendary coach at the University of Texas. And one day in the coffee shop at law school, I said, it's kind of funny. Every school I go to, their football team loses. And one of the guys from UT said, Darrell Royal will give you a full scholarship to Arkansas Law School if you'd like to go there. Well, that's the same thing I experienced with the Appropriations Committee. You know, the Appropriations Committee, when I came on, it was this glorious place to be. Oh, you should be so happy. And then within a year, we were the pariah of the nation. We were those evil people who spent the money, and we still are. And so we are at a different time in the appropriations process. Chairman Rogers likes to say we're the disappropriating committee today, and it's the nature of the world we live in that creates us that way. But you can't make too many jokes about what's going on right now in the country because we are in real serious times right now. And those of us that are on the Appropriations Committee, and you'll hear from a lot of the folks that are here today are relatively new to the committee, and I think their impressions will be interesting to you. But the truth is we have now a really bigger duty than we had before because we've got to be part of the team that saves the country. And that's hard. We've got to turn a ship of state and turn it in a different direction, a complete 180 to go from north to south. And that's a challenge. We go against at least 100 years of tradition and the way things are done in Washington. And now we're at a situation and we're actually sitting here at a time when we're at a turning point where real crisis can happen if we don't get the job done. And so I'm going to talk a little bit, just give you an outline of where we are, but I want to first point out to you as this super committee meets, and they're meeting right now, I hope, the consequences of them not getting their job done, at least for my district, and I think for you, as people who expect our nation to protect us, are pretty awesome, pretty terrible. The Secretary of the Army, along with one of my good friends who since I've been in the Army, I've watched him move from a 2-star general to a 4-star general, General Ray Odierno, the man who was in charge in Iraq after Petraeus moved on, a great American. They told us that in the Army caucus, and I'm the co-chair of the Army caucus, I have Fort Hood in my district, which is the largest military facility on the face of the earth. There are more active duty war fighters in Fort Hood than any place else on earth. And here's what they told us. The consequences of going to sequestration is 200,000 soldiers lost from the Army. Now that is a phenomenal amount of people when you're talking about, we've already agreed to bring the Army down to 480. We're now at roughly 590. We're going to bring it down to 480, and then 200,000 off of 480. We're going to go from 590 to 280. And 280 can't defend this nation. And you don't win wars without boots on the ground. And you don't deal with people who want to attack this country and blow up the World Trade Center with 280,000 soldiers. So that is a life-changing world for America. We go from the best defended nation in the country to one that can't defend itself as a result of the expenditures that we're doing. So that's what makes the job that we have as appropriators in changing the world that we're in difficult. We have, where we are with the super committee is pretty simple. the House is now using discretionary level for spending of the Budget Control Act of FY 2012. The basis of the negotiation in the 302A allocations of the Budget Control Act is $1.043 trillion. The Rhine budget is $1.019 trillion, and somewhere in that range is where the spending is going to be. And the great debate is where it's going to be. And there is a debate inside of our House, inside of our committee, as to where it should be. And those who are committed to the conservative, we're going to really cut spending, are down at the 1.019. And the top number is 1.043. Now, that's the spending for 13, basically for 12 that we're looking at. Now, here's the interesting concept. The committee, meanwhile, is looking at 1.2 trillion in cuts. That's supposed to be the minimum that we're going to deal with. So you can see that the direction that the country is going is towards saving money and cutting spending, not spending money. And yet, what are we? We are the spending committee. The great debate, I think, it has a caveat, and it's in the Constitution. The caveat in the Constitution is no money shall be spent from the Treasury without first being appropriated by the House. And so I'm a little bit curious about some of these executive orders that are going on from the administration when the Constitution of the United States says no money shall be spent out of the Treasury without first being appropriated by the House. And so we've got other issues that are peripheral issues as a debate between the legislative and the executive branch of government. I think that's an interesting place to be. I think it should be talked about more. But then I'm an old trial judge. And my whole world works, as Brian and I were talking about, you know, my world is right and wrong. There's not any gray. Gray people, if they're gray towards wrong, they go to prison. That's the way it works. You know, this is not hard stuff. So we've got a bunch of our folks here that are going to talk to you about their view of what's going on, and we're going to start off with one of my favorite people. This guy politically is the tiger of the Congress. Okay, my good friend Charlie Dent. I love this guy because when it comes time for elections, you are his opponent. You better get out of the way, boy. I'm telling you, this is the guy who's got a tough district. He handles it every time, and the reason he does is because he's smart, he's quick, he's good on his feet, and he goes for the throat if that's necessary. On the committee, he's already an asset that we are seeing very much, and we are proud of him. I want to tell you that Charlie Dent is the kind of guy that we need to have in this Congress. He's from a tough district. He makes tough votes for his district. And I like anybody that's brave, and this man's brave. Charlie, come up here.
With respect to the Appropriations Committee, a few things I wanted to mention. This is a committee, though, that actually has to get things done. I still think it's the best committee in Congress to be in because we do have to get things done. We have to fund the government. And that means we have to do something affirmatively, unlike some other committees and maybe some other folks in our institution, who make a career of voting no. We actually have to vote yes from time to time just to run the government. And I feel like we're the committee that's most responsible for governance when you think about it. And what frustrates me right now is we have a U.S. Senate that's been, well, it's over 900 days since they passed the budget. The president's on campaign mode. And in the House, I think we have some of our members, we have to get in line sometimes to vote for things because my big fear right now is that with the super committee's deadline looming, I'm concerned that they may not come to an agreement. And I think the public is looking at all of us here and saying, you guys can't get anything done. And every time we take this government to the brink of closure, about every 3 or 4 months, people look at us all and think we're fairly useless. And I think it's a bad indictment on all of us. And that's the one thing that kind of keeps me up at night that if we don't have the capacity to govern, it's not a good reflection on any of us, whether you're Republican or Democrat. The good news for the Republicans is, the Democrats control the White House right now. They'll be judged more harshly, but still, it's not good for our party if we're seen as ineffective. So that's been my main observation so far. Having served in the state legislature for a long time and been on the Appropriations Committee there, and I always knew that it was one thing I had to do as a member of the legislature. I had to fund the government, had to pass the budget, get it done on time. That was very, very important because the few times it didn't happen, that's when the public really judges you very harshly. They'll never give you credit for getting it done right. At least they won't give you a lot of credit for that, but they will certainly judge you harshly if you fail to lead, if you fail to govern. So those have been a few of my observations. Also, I wanted to mention, too, that I serve on 3 subcommittees, State Foreign Ops, THUD, and Homeland Security, where I served on the Authorizing Committee for some time. As the judge mentioned, we got these minibuses coming up now. First one coming out of the Senate on THUD Ag and CJS, and then we're going to move so it looks like the Senate's going to move on a second one on state financial services and energy and water. And so this is all going to get very interesting. So we have a lot of work to do, and I think I had 3 minutes, and my time is up. But thank you, Judge, for being a good mentor, and he'll announce the next member. Thank you.
We've got lots of bios up here, but let's talk about this next young lady that's coming in here. I have had the pleasure of knowing Cynthia Lummis from a personal standpoint. I do an hour almost every week on C-SPAN. I'm sure you have better things to do with your time than watch it, but and if you don't get there if you're not there when it starts, they just pass it over. And Cynthia was relatively new in the Congress, but she had the wherewithal to rescue me one night. I have never forgotten it, and took the time just so I didn't lose it, because I was on the way from Cannon Office Building down the tunnel, and that's the kind of friendship you want from your colleagues, that realizes they have no idea what you're doing, but they know you're not there, and you probably want the time, so they step up and they take it for you. I still want to thank her again. She is an asset to our conference. She is a leader in our conference. She has been called upon by the Speaker to do projects that are important, and by the NRCC to do projects that are important. Most importantly, she is a new and a firm voice on the Appropriations Committee. So let me introduce to the gentle lady from Wyoming, the cowboy state, and let her come up here and tell you how she sees the committee.
Well, thank you, Judge. I had no idea that I would land on the Appropriations Committee. And after I did, my husband bought me an old book. He's a vintage book fan. And it's an old history of the Appropriations Committee. Ran through about 1964. And I've read substantial portions of that book and see that prior to about 1964, the Appropriations Committee really saw its role, whether they were Democrats or Republicans, as protectors of and defenders of the public fisc, and defending that fund and taxpayers from all the people who wanted to get their hand in the public till. And it has truly changed since 1964. With more liberal Democrats and, quite frankly, more moderate Republicans in terms of spending on that committee, to become a committee that is very noted for spending a great deal of money. And there, I believe, will be now, after about 50 years of spenders on that committee, hopefully a culture shift to where the committee returns to what Representative Cannon speaks repeatedly about in the book, and their efforts to become protectors of the taxpayers' money and make sure that worthy projects and not just somebody's wish list is funded. So as we turn this ship around, as Judge Carter said, there are some painful decisions and difficult times involved in changing the culture of a committee that is used to spending more and more every year to becoming a committee that spends less every year. I am on 3 subcommittees: Agriculture, Interior and Environment, and Labor, Health, Human Services, and Education. I know that sounds like more than 3, but it's only 3. We were in the midst of debating the Interior and Environment bill when the midsummer discussions between the White House and John Boehner caused us to have to switch gears and address the debt ceiling. Consequently, we never finished that bill. There were many, many important writers on that bill, especially with regard to EPA. And I'm hopeful that the bill, as we reported it from committee, will become a strong basis for discussions as they occur with the Senate, because for highly regulated industries that the EPA touches, that is an area where we need considerable time to understand the true ramifications of many of these extremely onerous regulations that were proposed by EPA. We also, Denny Rehberg is reporting out the Labor, Health, Human Services, and Education bill, which will also have some riders on it that will address issues that deal with especially labor-related regulations that many industries are dealing with now. And of course, the Ag bill is becoming the basis for the first minibus, as it was earlier said. So there is going to be more of an impact by these, by what the Supercommittee is doing on the 2012 budget than I originally knew when we were discussing the debt ceiling, the Budget Control Act. Consequently, you're going to see a tremendous mishmash for the next few months between the 2012 budget, the Supercommittee's work, the CR that we're going to have to pass to get us through the end of the year, because as you know, the current CR expires on November 18th, and the Supercommittee doesn't report until November 23rd, and we don't have to adopt their findings until December 23rd, and you know us, we won't. So we will have to have another CR till the end of the year to cover the gap. So we're into a very difficult to follow period. Tighten your cinches and grab the saddle horn, hold on tight. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Congressman Steve Austria from Ohio, and he is somewhere. There you go. He is a asset to our community, and he fought a tough fight to get here. And we're proud to have Steve. Steve, come up here and tell us about your experience on the Appropriations Committee.
You know, it was an honor to be selected to be on the Appropriations Committee. And you have to understand, Judge, I got to put this in perspective. I followed my good friend, Congressman Dave Hobson, who many of you know, and who was served on the Appropriations Committee, was a cardinal on the Appropriations Committee. And you know, when I consulted with him, and we've been friends for 25 years. Still, he's my mentor. Helped me through my 10 years in the state legislature. I served 2 years in the House and 8 years in the Ohio Senate. And I asked him about following him on appropriations, and because of the work he had done. And he reminded me that it was a different committee from what he served on. And I don't know if he was giving me his condolences or congratulations for being asked to be on appropriations, but he did remind me it's where the action is. It's when we're facing the serious problems that we're facing in this country, it's the committee to be on to really deal with those problems. And Judge, you're right. I mean, it's still where the action is a different committee, but we are dealing with some very serious issues on the Appropriations Committee. And one of the goals I had as a new member of the Appropriations Committee was to try to help restore regular business order. You know, the fact that the last Congress, we didn't see a budget or a single appropriations bill from Speaker Pelosi or Senator Reid, you know, they failed, in my opinion, to do one of the basic functions of the United States Congress, and that's passing a budget and passing the appropriations bills. And as a result, we saw in a very important CR bill that we had to pass in April to get us through this fiscal year, and we're still challenged without a budget. And we continue to try to restore that regular order on the Appropriations Committee, which is extremely important, I think, as we move forward, because clearly it has caused a tremendous amount of undue strain, I think, on our country, on hardworking families, small businesses, our military and their families. The uncertainty is caused by not having a real budget can lead to furloughs, scheduled slips, cost increases, management problems, and some of the most important programs in my district that's directly impacted with our national defense, not to mention the quality of life issues they raise with our brave men and women who are serving overseas and their families. In my district, there are 4 military bases that I represent. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is the largest single-site employer in the state of Ohio. 27,000 military civilians, defense contractors work inside defense and in the area, and it's extremely important to Ohio, as well as the Springfield Air National Guard Base, Rickenbacker Air and Army National Guard Base, and the Navy Reserve Center, as well as the Defense Supply Center of Columbus. So it's a very important issue for me when it comes to defense, and I serve on the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Committee, which directly deals with many of their issues. And so much of my focus in my first year on the Appropriations Committee is helping to ensure that our defense community has what they need to protect our nation, which I think is extremely important as we go through these challenging times, and ensure that that we're doing our jobs here in Washington to ensure that our men and women who are serving overseas are able to complete their missions and get home safely, and that they have the resources and the equipment to be able to do that, and that's extremely important to me. But I also understand that we are going through a very difficult time with our economy, and that we have to get our fiscal house in order for this country to move forward and be strong economically. And I'm deeply concerned, as I think most Americans are, about our nation's economic future and the difficult spending decisions that we're going to have to make on appropriations, but they're necessary to return our nation to a sound financial footing. So, the challenge we have is getting our fiscal house in order and restoring regular business. And we understand that there are going to be cuts, but at the same time understanding the impact that those cuts are having on those back home whom we represent, which is so important.
The next gentleman is my good friend Alan Nunnelee from Mississippi. He and I are missing Bible study right now to be here with you, so that's how much we think of you. Okay? And when you're in a Bible study with a guy, you get to know him. And his heart's good, and he's a good man, and he's smart, and he knows what he's talking about. So I want to bring my good friend and colleague, Alan Nunnelee, up here to talk to about what he thinks about it.
Thank you, Judge. It is a privilege to be here with you. And it's an honor to be on the Appropriations Committee. There are 3 of us that are freshmen that are on the committee. I think that is a tribute to the House leadership and as well as Chairman Rogers' leadership, that he would be willing to include 3 freshmen on the committee. I came to the Congress as a freshman. I chaired the Appropriations Committee at the state level. And so I had a number of people ask me, well, how is it alike? How is it different? Well, a couple of ways it's different is that here we put a string of 6 or 9 zeros at the end of all the bills that we didn't do at the state. And then the other is that at the state level, we don't have a printing press where we can print money in the basement of the Capitol. We tried that about 150 years ago, and it didn't work out too well. But there are some similarities. Charlie hit on it. The Appropriations Committee is different from any of the authorizing committees. Charlie talked about the fact that we must pass a bill. And a nuance of that, and I learned it at the state level, is that we don't have the luxury of picking and choosing which bills we deal with. If you're in an authorizing committee, you weigh the need to get legislation passed against the political currents that are flowing to find the most opportune time to bring it out. Whereas appropriation, we got 12 bills, and we must take up all 12 of them. And it does present some unique challenges. Now, as a freshman, I think we have been a part of helping change the culture here in D.C. One thing I learned pretty quickly is that in this town, you use the same words and phrases that we used back in Mississippi. They just have different meanings. One of them is something simple like cutting spending. Well, I found out real quickly that the Washington definition of spending cuts is a cut in the rate of growth. And if you plan to spend an extra $1 billion and you only spend an extra $800 million, then you've cut spending. Well, the folks in Mississippi don't buy that. And what I know from talking to families, from small businesses, and even local and state governments, is that in these tough times, they're sitting around their kitchen tables, they're sitting around their board tables, they're also sitting around tables in county courthouses around the state, and they're making tough decisions. And they have every reason to expect their policymakers in D.C. to make those same tough decisions. And I think that's one thing we've done as part of the freshman class, is we have helped begin to change the culture in D.C. And now when we talk about spending cuts, we're not talking about spending cuts based on Washington's definition, but based on the definition that's used by the American people. And I will acknowledge we have not cut near the amount that I would like to have cut, or that I think we as a Republican conference wanted to cut. We do still have to deal with Harry Reid in the United States Senate, but we have changed the culture. And we didn't get into this mess overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. We're committed because we understand the direct link between spending, between the threat of higher taxes, and the threat and the cloud hanging over us in economic growth. So as part of the freshman class, we're committed to do our job to bring our budget back in line. Thank you.
I think you're getting a good cross-section of the talent we've got in this committee. This next gentleman, Steve Womack, is from Arkansas. You know, Texas was populated by all the people they ran out of Arkansas. So we're real close to those folks from Arkansas. And you know, I serve on the T-HUD committee with Steve, and he asked, you know, I like a guy, I'm an old trial judge, and I like guys that ask tough questions and put people on the spot. And having been a former mayor, which is really down in the trenches, he's got the tough questions down pat. And so I want you to listen to what he has to say. Steve.
Thank you, Judge. First of all, let me just say it is a great honor to serve on the committee. I have people back in Arkansas ask me, how did you do that? No member from the 3rd District of Arkansas, dating back well beyond John Paul Hammersmith, has ever served on one of these select committees. And now, John Paul did get invited onto Ways and Means, but because of his seniority, he chose not to go that path. But you just simply ask for the opportunity. And I knew the math was in the favor of the freshman class, because when you have 87 new freshmen arrive in Washington, you have to believe that some of those A committee assignments are going to be dispersed out to some incoming freshmen, or else they'll have to make those committees a lot smaller. And so the three of us, Kevin, myself, and Alan, all were very fortunate to be assigned to the committee. And I have the additional privilege of being able to be the vice chair of the Energy and Water Subcommittee. So I am eternally grateful to Chairman Rogers and the House leadership for doing that. And as I said, most everything's already been said. There is one thing that I'd like to add, however. It's something that we all need to remind ourselves of. And I spend a great deal of my time back in the district reminding people of this, because now that they know I'm on the Appropriations Committee, they think that I have this magic wand to be able to balance the books. Let's just keep in mind that you can't, if you took every single program that the Appropriations Committee deals with, every single program, to zero, you still can't balance the budget. And so there's, I think, a great message to all of us in here that we have this enormous challenge facing us to be able to cut and cut appropriately, but to be very careful that we try to balance the federal books on the back of the discretionary side of the table. It's just not possible. And so I think that continues to be one of the biggest challenges we have. And there's been discussion about whether it's 1043 or 1019 or whatever that number is going to be in between. At the end of the day, we have a spending problem we have to deal with, and the appropriators are the ones that are going to have to lead in that regard.
Well, and now the guy who's at the bottom of the list with the Y that all the W's love, Kevin Yoder, we come up here. Our time is running out, so I'm going to just introduce him and let him go.
I will say it's been a real pleasure to be on Appropriations as a freshman. You've heard a lot of great anecdotes about what we're up to and the challenges we face. It's no secret we're in a fiscal crisis in Washington. As coming from the Kansas legislature, like Al Nunnelee, I was chairman of the House Appropriations Committee there, and so people ask me as well, what are the differences between serving in the state legislature and serving in Washington, D.C.? And one of the things I've really found striking is that we are fighting on the Appropriations Committee and on the floor of the U.S. House for the very values of the American people. The challenges we're facing aren't just necessarily about what to cut and what to move from one side to another. We're actually debating what type of economy we want to have. Is it going to be a government-run economy? Is it going to be a private sector focused job creation economy? And that fundamental values debate about the free enterprise system versus a big government system is really striking. We have Democrats and Republicans in Kansas. We don't have very many folks that argue that raising taxes and spending more money is good for economic prosperity. And you actually have folks in the Appropriations Committee, and it's really stark. I mean, it's black or white, as the judge said. You're either someone who believes that raising taxes, spending more money, borrowing more money, putting more regulations on the economy is good for it, or it isn't. And we have folks who actually get up on the floor of the House and in committee and say, you know what's wrong with this economy? We're not regulating it enough. We don't have enough government programs. We're not borrowing enough. We're not spending enough to stimulate the economy. We're not raising taxes enough. And just in the Kansas legislature, no one ever went to the floor and said, we need to tax, spend, and borrow more to build prosperity. And so that battle is just really interesting, I think, to the American people. It's amazing, and it was one of the biggest surprises to me, is that we're actually having a debate about core, basic economic values. And the folks in this room, and I think the vast majority of American people know that this country wasn't built on big government programs. It wasn't built on short-term stimulus bills. It wasn't built on borrowing and spending. It was built on the hard work and determination of the American people. And I look at Kansas's history, and a century ago, 150 years ago, this is 1861 when our state was founded, just like a lot of states, folks were coming out to Kansas with no guarantees on a covered wagon to try to build this country from scratch. And in the process, by working hard, they carved a future out of the prairie and built the most prosperous nation the world has ever seen. We didn't build that country through big government programs, through stimulus bills, through government regulations, through all these great Washington ideas. We built it from the ground up by the American people. And so when we're facing this tough economic time, we know that to rebuild this country, we have to get back to those very core values that got us here in the first place. And it's in the Appropriations Committee. It's with Judge Carter and my other good colleagues that we're fighting that battle on the front lines every day to rebuild this country so it can be the country that we receive from our parents and grandparents. We can leave that same nation to the next generation. I'm proud to be part of that battle. I didn't realize, I think, when I got there on that committee how critical that actual debate in that committee was going to be to the future of our country. But I'm proud to be there. We've got a great working committee, and all of your support and encouragement and everything you do helps us along the way, and we've got a lot of work to do. So it's time to end the meeting and get back to that tough work. So thanks for having us here this morning.
I think we've given you a good cross-section of the kind of talent we have and that we have in this Congress and on this committee. These are people with drive and intelligence who take this business seriously.